All right, well, I'm back. Drew Allen, the Millennial Minister of Truth. Look, I was away longer than I intended to, and I'm not going to get too much into this today, but I do want to let you know what I've been working on. And that is the development of a rather ambitious organization to counter the left's efforts to indoctrinate our children. It is my feeling and my belief that while there are organizations out there that are effective and wonderful, they start with high school clubs or college clubs like TPUSA. Their objective is corrective. What we need is preventative treatment, which is to help children combat this indoctrination, inoculate them before they've already been indoctrinated. So we have it happening on two ends now. We will have, high school, college trying to undo the damage, but we're also going to go down to 8 to 11-year-olds, and we're going to inoculate them from it to begin with, to start at the source. Because I saw a story about New Jersey, and in New Jersey, they are now ensuring, Democrats, that elementary age kids, that'd be 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, well, they are going to be required to be fluent in gender theory. So the left is playing a long game, and they're not waiting. They're going after our kids and grooming them as early as they possibly can, and we need to combat this. And so that's what my organization is going to be aimed at doing, taking kids from 8 years old all the way up through high school, teaching them civics, teaching them the true history of the United States of America, teaching them to debate, teaching them to think critically. And that will be this organization's objective when I complete the vision here. But you can expect that shortly. But I've been working long and hard on that. So that's why I've been away. Now, on that subject, I want to play something for you that I think is shocking. This is a transgender member of the Minnesota, I don't know if it's a state house or state senate there, but it's a state representative. And I want you to just listen to this clip, and then we'll talk about it briefly.
You mentioned the Paxton case, and the AGs in many states are very clear about that. They're almost jubilant about being able to use these laws to ban young people from accessing content that could be educational if they are queer. And you're a principal, you have LGBT students in your school, and we also know that they're not receiving sex education for queer kids. We know that prurient interest could be, for many people, the very existence of transgender kids. More and more people are saying there simply are no transgender kids.
Did you understand what just came out of that creep's groomer's mouth? He's saying that restricting kids from porn is harmful because pornography might be educational if they are queer. So they need access to porn. And this is why I am on a tear to get this organization up and running, because I am not going to tolerate this. No American should tolerate this. The idea that this creep can speak so confidently in a chamber like that as a state representative, making that argument, shows you how fallen this society is. How deep the sin and rot has infected our culture and our institutions. So thank you for revealing yourself there. You are a disgusting reprobate. You should not be allowed within a football field of children. So anyway, we'll get back to some of this in a little bit. But first, I'm going to talk about the tariffs, and I'm going to give you the facts, give you the information, explain what's going on with that. But first, I want to talk about this Stephen Colbert and James Talarico interview on the Colbert Show. This Talarico guy is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And he's a guy out there who's constantly talking about the importance of separation of church and state, which, of course, is not in our Constitution. It is used by the left as a catchphrase to try and silence Christians and allow creeps like that transgender state representative to propose obviously amoral ideas like our kids need porn if they're gay. So Talarico's interesting. I think he claims to be an 8th generation Texas, and he's running for the nomination, the Democrat nomination, if you will, in the primary, which is going to be on March 3rd, to compete for a U.S. Senate seat. And he went to seminary, Presbyterian, I believe, which should tell you everything you need to know. I'm sorry. The Presbyterian Church is one of those churches that has fallen. So he's come out of that seminary, and it's strategic because the left leans on expertise and experts, right? So when they were doing unconscionable things during the COVID lockdowns and trying to force vaccinate people and promote a dangerous vaccine that they knew was harmful, when they were trying to keep you in your house and keep you from going to work, they told you to listen to the experts, right? Dr. Fauci is an esteemed expert. Well, which experts are you going to listen to? Fauci was an expert, and yet his scientific recommendations and edicts were not scientific. There were other experts that were correct, including non-experts like me who are correct. But this is what the left does. And so James Talarico, Texas is, kind of one of those Bible Belt states. It's where I grew up and was raised, in the Dallas Metroplex. And they, failed to run Beto O'Rourke, right? Because they thought, well, this guy will protect. I mean, he's wider than me. But they pitched Beto as, a Latino, because they thought, well, there's a big Latino population in Texas, and so maybe we can get one of these seats and, turn Texas, blue if we, play the Mexican Latino card. And it didn't work. And so now they have settled on a new strategy to think this clean-cut James Talarico, who comes from a seminary, that this guy can be their winning ticket. But anyway, look, this whole kerfuffle, if you will, was a scheme thought up and designed by Talarico and Colbert to fundraise for Talarico, because nobody watches the Colbert Show. Talarico is, the favorite, obviously, of the powers that be in the Democrat Party. Think Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton circa 2016. So they want to push Jasmine Crockett, who's black, out, and they want James Talarico to be the nominee, the candidate. And so that's why they did this. And it's Democrats that are censoring their own in this case. And they're trying to, of course, make this about Donald Trump and his FCC, and that's factually incorrect. Now, look, do I need to give more background on this? Do you understand what happened here? So Stephen Colbert had James Talarico on a show, and it's in the midst of a campaign. He is a candidate for, the Democrat nomination or whatever to be a Senate candidate. And that primary is going to be on March 3rd. And there is something called, an equal time rule, FCC's equal time rule. And it kicks in, and it only applies to candidates who are running for election. And so what it demands is that broadcast stations, including the Colbert Show, they have to provide equal non-discriminatory airtime to legally qualified political candidates for the same office if they allow one to appear. This has nothing to do with Republicans. It had nothing to do with Trump. And I experienced this. I can tell you from personal experience how this works, and it's not abnormal at all. This is the law of the land, and everybody who has an FCC license cooperates. I'm a publicist. And I've done PR for political candidates during election cycles. I've done it for many famous conservatives as well. And even radio stations, there's a problem. For example, I'll have a political candidate and I'll be pitching them on some topic that's in the news. And I've had this happen where I think it was even the Michael Berry show. I think he's down there in Houston, but pretty big radio show. And I booked a candidate on there through the producer. And then I got a message back. Oh, sorry, we can't actually have this candidate on right now. This was years ago. What do you mean you can't have the candidate on? What's going on here? I told the guy that he was going on the show. He was excited about it. What's happening? It's like, oh, well, it's an election, cycle and election season. He's running for office. So, there's just some issues that come up. And the issue is that if Michael Berry were to put that person on his show, then he would be required to then go and find one of his opponents, another Republican who was also running, to win that primary or whatever it would be. And he'd have to then stick that person on the show too. That is the requirement. And so that's what happened here. So Jasmine Crockett is actually, and I'm no fan of Jasmine Crockett, but she's absolutely right. And she's called out the BS between this collusion between Colbert and Talarico. I want to play this clip for you. Listen to her here.
Have you received any additional clarity either from the Trump administration, from Talarico's campaign, or from the Colbert show about why this all happened in the first place? And has Colbert invited you on his show especially since Talarico just announced that he raised $2.5 million off of this story?
No, I've not been invited on Colbert prior to his interview nor post his interview. Obviously, I've done Colbert twice in the past. And so there were questions that people had about whether or not basically equal time, so to speak, had been offered to me in order to try to avoid Brendan Carr and his misinterpretation or his reinterpretation of the rules. The only information that I got was after this debacle took place. I did receive a phone call from the parent company, from a representative for the parent company, that basically said they did not tell them they couldn't air it. They just said, if you air it, just make sure that you offer the representative equal time. Now, obviously, I wasn't engaged in that conversation, so I cannot confirm the veracity of any statements, but I can confirm that I had never been asked to go on as it relates to kind of talking about the Senate race.
Yeah, so there you go. What's unique about this is right now, as opposed to in the past when Crockett would have been on the show, right now they're both running to be U.S. senators. They're running for the same in the same primary, Crockett and Talarico. And so what happened is the FCC obviously is monitoring radio stations and whatnot too. And most of these stations, like in the example I gave you with my experience with the Michael Berry show years ago when I was first getting familiar with this equal time rule, they already know, the hosts know, they're not going to risk it. They're not going to do it. And so this was a calculated move. This isn't a reinterpretation or misinterpretation like she was trying to allude to about Brendan Carr. This is how it works. And so what happened was, obviously, he's announcing Talarico is coming on the show, and the legal team said, hey, this could trigger the equal time rule. And so they told Stephen Colbert and his producers and his show, hey, look, that's fine that you have Talarico on, but, if you're going to have him on, that about the equal time rule, so you've got to have her on a subsequent show and give her the same amount of time. That's all it was. They didn't tell him he couldn't air it. They just gave him the advice that he should have known already because he's been in this industry for a long time, and he darn well did know about it. And so rather than saying, okay, yeah, no problem, we're going to have Talarico on, I'll have Crockett on next. But you see, he's part of the collusion machine, the Democrat elite. And they've already decided that they don't want Crockett to be the candidate. They want it to be Talarico. He's the one who's been anointed. Like Clinton was anointed over Bernie Sanders. And so they're trying to sabotage Jasmine Crockett and make sure that Talarico makes it across the finish line. And so all Colbert had to do was say, you're right, I know this. So in a week or two, I'll have her on so she can talk too, because they're both running for this U.S. Senate spot in Texas. That's it. But they didn't do that. So James Talarico, who claims to be this Christian, who always talks about separation of church and state, And nobody talks about the Bible or quote scripture out of context, by the way, not just out of context, but he just makes things up completely. But for a person who says we have to have separation of church and state, this guy cherry picks and talks about scripture like a vegan at a barbecue. So Talarico is a fraud and he's a liar. And it's outrageous. But here's what's funny. Jasmine Crockett has stumbled upon something. And that is, wow, the Democrat Party is racist. I'm black and they don't want me to be the candidate. Listen to this.
The thing that is not normal is for me to be attacked from the left. That is the new wild card in this scenario. But it's just interesting. And, I've been asked a couple of times, a couple of things about it. And, I look at this specifically as a civil rights lawyer, and I see when they're sending out ads and they're darkening my skin, and I'm just like, I know what this is, right? And the reality is that, yes, I woke up a black woman. I was born a black woman. I know I'm a black woman, for everybody that didn't think I didn't know. Just FYI, just FYI. But I am not running on the fact that I'm a black woman. I am running on my credentials.
Indeed. Such credentials she has. Such an erudite individual, obviously. So anyway, yes, Jasmine, the Democrat Party and the powers that be are sabotaging you because they don't want you, a black candidate, to run in Texas, because they've decided that this clean-cut, fake preacher, wolf in sheep's clothing, Talarico, that he has the best chance of winning the Senate seat. So yes, it is about you being black and it's about him being white. And they've decided that this white guy has a better chance than you, a black woman, of winning a U.S. Senate seat in Texas, because they've already tried the race card. They tried it with Beto and it didn't work. And so they're not going to try the black card in Texas because it's not going to work. So they're going with Talarico. Sorry, Jasmine. All right, let's get into the Supreme Court. They ruled against Trump's tariffs. I want to explain, honestly, the insanity of this. I'll break it down in just a second. But first, what do 3 billionaires, 4 banks, and a legendary 72-year-old investor all have in common? They're all making the same shocking prediction: gold is headed for $10,000 or more. Goldman Sachs says gold will surge 20%. JP Morgan says 25%. And one respected economist now believes the U.S. government could deliberately raise gold's official price to help pay off the national debt. And the world's wealthiest players, they're already making their move. Our friends at American Alternative Assets, they just released a powerful new report. It's called The Surprising Case for $10,000 Gold. Now you can see exactly what the wealthiest players are seeing, and you can see it for free. This breaks down the hidden signals. It breaks down the central bank gold buying spree, and it explains how smart Americans are protecting their retirement with gold right now. You can go to cloutgold.com to download it free, or call 855-803-GOLD. That's cloutgold.com or 855-803-GOLD. All right, so we had the Supreme Court decision come out today, February 20th, 2026. And they have struck down the broad tariffs imposed by President Trump under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. This is a 1977 law meant for handling national emergencies by allowing, listen to this, the president to regulate international economic transactions. Regulate. Okay? Now, the majority opinion, which was written by the reprehensible Chief Justice John Roberts, he was joined by the liberal justices, and he was joined by so-called conservatives, Gorsuch and Barrett. Now, they ruled that the IEEPA does not give the president authority to impose tariffs. They say tariffs are essentially taxes on imports, and Congress has historically reserved that power for itself through specific trade laws. So in their estimation and opinion, They saw this as a major question requiring clear congressional authorization because they're linking tariffs to taxation. They say the IEEPA, this International Emergency Economic Powers Act from 1977, that law, they say it doesn't mention tariffs, duties, or similar terms. They said that while the IEEPA allows regulating imports in various ways, embargoes, quotas, or bans, outright bans on trade, it doesn't stretch to levying taxes of any amounts on any goods for unlimited time. Now, there are some amazing, amazing dissenting opinions here. And these individuals, including Kavanaugh, including Justice Clarence Thomas, they are, I mean, they showed their brilliance here. So Kavanaugh dissented along with Thomas and Samuel Alito, and Kavanaugh argued the opposite. Listen to this. So he argued that the statute's broad language allowing the president to regulate importation of property should include tariffs as one tool among many for controlling imports during emergencies. And what he pointed out was genius because he points out this inconsistency, or actually it's an outright absurdity in the majority's logic. Because the majority, they said that the president can, under this Emergency Powers Act, Economic Act, that the president does have the authority to fully ban imports from a country. In other words, he can totally cut off trade, which is equivalent to an infinite tariff, which makes it impossible to import something by pricing it at infinity or simply prohibiting it completely. So if the president can simply cut off trade completely, why can't he impose finite, that would be non-infinite tariffs like 10%, 25%, or 60% duties? And Kavanaugh's making the point here that banning everything is way more extreme, a way more extreme exercise of power than merely adding a tax that still allows some trade to occur. So if the statute permits the big hammer, which is a total ban, it should logically permit the smaller one, a partial tax. So he exposes the incredible illogic of majority's opinion. Kavanaugh also mocked the majority's opinion. And this is what I want to get into, because the Supreme Court is very, it's dangerous because it's very fickle and it's very political. Now consider that Chief Justice Roberts struck down Donald Trump's ability to use this Emergency Act to impose tariffs. But in 2022, you might recall, the court struck down Biden's broad vaccine or test mandate for large private employers, and yet Roberts supported this. So just think about this. How can the same court, led by Roberts, bend over to uphold a lawless Biden vaccine mandate for federal linked employees, yet refuse to read the IEEPA broadly enough to let the president use tariffs? They call this a major questions doctrine, which means, look, they're strict on one president's actions, supposedly lax on another's. And this is complete hypocrisy. So think of it like this, folks. The majority says, okay, sure, the president can slam the door shut on all imports, but he can't just charge a toll to walk through the door. And then when Kavanaugh addresses the hypocrisy of the opinion about the jab, He says, effectively, you guys were fine stretching the law to force healthcare workers to get jabbed under vague federal funding rules, but now you're super strict on trade powers? So, but there were two cases, by the way, about these vaccine mandates. One was struck down 6-3. That was the trying to use OSHA, which wasn't authorized to regulate public health crises like the pandemic, trying to use OSHA as the enforcement to, force vaccinate as terms of being employed by the federal government. And there was another case, though, that they ruled in favor of, which had to do with, federal programs that, used Medicare or Medicaid. I'll have to look up the other case. But the point is, it's just willy-nilly the way they interpret these things. Now, Justice Clarence Thomas, who obviously is just a blessing to this nation, a great man, and really a true genius. Now, he brilliantly did this. So he pointed out that the majority's reading avoided a bigger constitutional problem. Like basically whether this IEEPA, whether their broad delegation violates the non-delegation doctrine. And this is the doctrine that means Congress can't hand over too much lawmaking power. So Thomas flips this. He says if the court thinks unlimited tariffs raise non-delegation red flags, well, that's an argument for Congress to fix the statute, not for judges to rewrite regulate, which is the only word in this statute, to exclude a core tool, which would be the use of tariffs. So, I mean, his dissent boils down to this, folks. The statute says what it says. It's broad emergency powers to control imports. And tariffs fit comfortably within that understanding. And the majority here, their narrow take on this, it ignores text, it ignores history, it ignores the foreign affairs context, and it injects judicial second guessing. That is bullcrap, where deference is due. And by the way, so now what do? We've collected billions of tariffs. And by the way, the court, of course, didn't provide a solution here. We got billions in tariffs. And now we're just going to write checks? Send that money back to these governments who are trying to screw us? This is as anti-American of a Supreme Court ruling as I have seen in a long time. Now, look, it's not over. Kavanaugh had something else to say too, which was encouraging. He said, look, I mean, that's okay, fine. Okay. Roberts and the dummies on the court, they struck this down, but okay, whatever. There are many other ways he can impose tariffs and there's no problem. So he provides a solution. He says, look, although I firmly disagree with the court's holding today, the decision might not substantially constrain a president's ability to order tariffs going forward. This is Kavanaugh. That is because numerous other federal statutes authorize the president to impose tariffs and might justify most, if not all, of the tariffs at issue in this case, albeit with a few additional procedural steps that IEEPA as an emergency statute does not require. And then he goes on to name them. Those statutes include the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, Section 232, the Trade Act of 1974, Sections 122, 201, and 301. So basically, Kavanaugh's coming out and said, this is garbage. And I'll just go ahead and tell you right now, as a Supreme Court justice and a legal mind, here are the statutes you can just go ahead and use. Use these and you can do it. So honestly, obviously I have my differences with Kavanaugh and some of these people, but good for Kavanaugh here. Good for Kavanaugh. All right, I want to get in. I want to move over to just basically the economic illiteracy of the Democrat Party and liberals. So Steven Spielberg, a billionaire Well, he has reportedly left the state of California over Democrat-led wealth tax policies. Now, I live in California, and this is so insane. So this is probably going to take place. And already Zuckerberg's left. Many other billionaires have already fled California. They fled even last year because the state of California has proposed a tax which would slap a one-time 5% tax on individual fortunes exceeding $1 billion. And if this tax is approved, it'll be on the ballot in November. I have no doubt that Californians, by nature of most of them being idiots, they will, because they're victims and, they believe in the ideology of grievance. So they hate these nasty billionaires, even though not a cent of this tax will go in their pockets or benefit them in any way whatsoever. But they don't like billionaires because they're jealous and lazy and failures themselves. And so they want to punish the successful. So this would apply retroactively to the beginning of this year. And by the way, this retroactive billionaire tax that'll be on the ballot in November, it would include stocks, art, and intellectual property in the calculation. That's right. You got a nice piece of art? Well, that's going to be counted towards your net worth. It's crazy. And this reminds me of something. Do you remember during the Biden auto pen administration? They wanted to propose their own sort of wealth tax. And the Biden plan, which thankfully was just shot down, even by many Democrats who realized it was insane, they wanted to tax regular income every single year at 25% for people worth $100 million. Now, why is that concept completely nuts? But let me give you an analogy. The house analogy. Okay, so you buy a house for $400,000. And next year, the market booms. And similar houses are now selling for $500,000. So that means you have a $100,000 unrealized gain. That would be a paper profit. So under a tax like Biden was trying to propose on unrealized gains, the government is saying, congratulations on your $100,000 gain, even though you didn't sell your house and you don't have any extra cash. Well, you're going to pay us 25%. That would be $25,000 right now. You don't have $25,000 laying around because Zillow says your house is worth $100,000 more today than it was when you bought it. You might have to sell your home or take out a loan or borrow against it to pay the tax bill. And then let's say, a year or two later, the market crashes. The house drops down to $350,000. Well, your gain vanished, right? But you already paid $25,000 to the government. They're not going to give you a refund for the imaginary profit that disappeared. This is how stupid their ideas are. So anyway, so Spielberg, some choice. Now, look, he's got family, kids, I think, that live in New York City. And so he hasn't commented directly on this tax. Good luck to him in New York City. But, it's amazing because as radical as New York City has become, and obviously the state of New York being very blue as well, it doesn't hold a candle somehow to California. We'll see. Mamdani's working his magic, his Muslim magic. He may yet surpass California as the worst state in the country. But, this is so typical. So Steven Spielberg, who's, a rabid proponent of the Democrat Party, who hosts fundraisers for them, pals around with them, helps them get elected, etc., a loyalist in that party and an elite, well, he doesn't want to be here to pay 5% of his fortune to California. And yet, will he change being a Democrat? No. And that's the thing. You're never going to punish these billionaires. They're always going to find a way out. Even if that is your logic, you're a victim and you hate rich people or whatever else. Like, I don't care about Steven Spielberg being a billionaire. He's made amazing movies. He earned it. He has a special, unique talent, and he capitalized on it. So he deserves to be a billionaire. I don't look at Steven Spielberg and say, well, you know, my $1,500 a month PGE bill is making, you know, my own finances tight. That's unfair. It's unfair that Steven Spielberg has $1 billion and I'm struggling. So I deserve some of what he has because he somehow, stole the money from me? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And that's one of my problems too, by the way, with you know, this Talarico and everything else and their fake, disgusting, hypocritical, just demonic reinvention of Christianity. I mean, 2 of the 10 commandments talk about not coveting, not stealing. And yet baked into the left's very ideology is coveting everybody else's stuff. Anybody who's got more money than you, you're jealous. You want their stuff. That's not biblical. And this is the thing. I mean, the Talarico's vision of Christianity is not Christianity at all. God supports abortion because Mother Mary, the Virgin Mother Mary, gave birth to Jesus, and an angel told her, "What does that have to do with abortion, huh?" Talarico, are you nuts? Of course he is, lunatic. But you know, Talarico would never come on and debate me. He only goes on friendly shows where his theology is not going to be questioned by somebody who knows it better than him. I would destroy him. But that's why he goes on Colbert. That's why he goes on these shows and he gives his, well, God is non-binary. Therefore, we need to cut off the PPs of 8-year-olds because obviously God endorsed that because he's non-binary. What? And nobody pushes back. They just let him talk this way. He goes on Joe Rogan and makes these stupid arguments. I didn't watch the Joe Rogan show. I don't know. I mean, Joe Rogan's usually a pretty good interviewer, but nobody pushes back on this. All right. Let's just finish up here with Tucker Carlson. You know, I'm not in the habit of bashing other people that are in the movement, and he's not in this movement. Tucker Carlson is a sellout. And it's really sad for me to admit that because, you know, I put clients on his show for years, his Fox show, even his podcast when he was first starting his new network. And so I think a lot of people are disappointed in Tucker Carlson. And Tucker Carlson's a rabid anti-Semite. He's obviously, his objective is to destroy Israel, to smear Israel, to turn everybody against Israel and Jews. And this latest stunt is the reason I'm speaking out against it, because I don't like liars like Talarico, the fake Christian who lies about Trump's FCC so he can get $2.5 million and enhance his star power to help him win the primary on March 3rd. You're a liar. I don't like you. So February 18th, Tucker Carlson hops on a jet. He goes into Israel's Ben Gurion airport, private plane. He's not going there to tour the Holy Land. He's just there to snag an interview with U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee. And he doesn't ever leave the airport. He plans to do and does do the interview in the terminal. Doesn't step foot outside the airport. The whole visit lasts a few hours in the VIP lounge where celebs and bigwigs pay thousands for concierge service for these private suites. And, you know, that speedy security away from the plebes, right? You and me, the plebeians. And so we have footage of this. It was smooth as silk. There's a viral video out there that shows Tucker smiling ear to ear. He's hugging an airport staffer like they're old pals. He's posing for these happy photos. There's no drama. There's no handcuffs. Just what? Routine passport checks. A couple of standard questions. You know, hey, what's the purpose of your visit? And the U.S. Embassy coordinates his landing. Off he goes, posting greetings from Israel on his way out. And then what happens? Tucker Carlson, the fraud and liar, the storyteller, weaves a fanciful tale aimed at attacking Israel. So he spins this yarn to the British tabloids, Daily Mail UK. He claims he and his team were detained by these shadowy figures, these security goons who snatched their passports. They hauled his executive producer into a side room for interrogation, and they grilled them on what they chatted about with Mike Huckabee. I gotta hand it to him. I mean, it's a pretty good thriller plot he's trying to project there. Except it's all baloney. It's all BS. It's all lies. The U.S. Embassy denied it. We have video of him having a pleasant time. Israeli official says it was just polite, routine questions that they apply to everyone. I mean, I've been to airports. Now, I'm not a celebrity or anything like that, but, you know, I get asked questions even when I enter the United States. You know, it's like a nerve-wracking experience. He bypassed a lot of that because he flew in on a private jet. You know, this is standard. It's not sinister. And so why the tall tale, Tucker? Tucker Smollett. Move over, Juicy Schmolier. Now we got Tucker Schmolier. So he's just stirring the pot because he wants to feed this narrative that he's obsessed with of Israel's being some oppressive boogeyman. That's it. That's why he did it. You know? This guy, I mean, this guy flew in on a private jet. He got the VIP treatment. And then he lied about being victimized to drum up anti-Israel outrage for all his fans out there. You know, look, you got to fact check these drama queens, folks. Because in this case, you know, this detainment was just a layover with some flair. So anyway, there we have it. I'll just comment briefly here on some of these comments before I bid you farewell for the day and for the weekend. Renee Perpetua is a big anti-Israel. You know, she's got Israel derangement syndrome. Why does Israel have Medicare for all, but we in the U.S. do not? Well, I don't want Medicare for all, firstly, Renee. So that's a strike against Israel. I'm not a radical lunatic socialist. She says, Renee also says, we don't owe Israel anything, but we give them $800 million a month. Why? Because our government is a sellout. Hey, Renee, we give many countries money. Why don't you criticize how much we gave to Ukraine? We gave Ukraine over a period of, 2 or 3 years, what we gave Israel over the past, 60. So, this obsession with Israel. Well, Renee says I'm a disgrace. I love liberals, man. I really do. They're so friendly. They're so sharp-minded. They're so willing and eager and able to debate with rational arguments. They don't name call because they're so confident in their opinions. They're so well-studied and well-versed in economics and history and everything else. That's good. Renee, keep listening to this show, and don't worry. In no time at all, you will be a smart person as well. All right, folks, that's all we have time for today. I hope you have an awesome weekend. I'll be sharing more information with you about as I roll out this ambitious plan I have. We got to do something about it. We got to do something about the Renees out there. that probably support these groomers that think that pornography should be given to children in school if they're homosexual or transgender or something like that. We got to stand up to these people because they're a minority in the country. They're lightweights. And all we have to do is do a little bit of study and we can make mincemeat of these losers. All right. God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week.